Alright, hello and welcome. So today I'm doing an update roundup, and what this is basically going to entail are some important changes that have recently happened in updates, some highlights of Tenogen skins and the Mesa Deluxe skin, and some various news that we have about future upcoming changes that I think are going to be very impactful to the game, and things that I am excited about. This is going to work kind of like a dev stream breakdown, except for it is just about random development things and not necessarily things that would have happened on a dev stream. So let's get started with that. So first and foremost, we have some game changes, and these are not, of course, all of the changes made to the game in the patches, but these are the big, important things that I think matter to talk about. First and foremost is that toggle sprint now actually works. Now, what do I mean when I say that toggle sprint actually works? I mean that aiming down sight, crouching, and jumping, changing to your operator, all of those things no longer turn off sprint. So, we are now in an age of this game where you don't have to hold down shift 24/7. And I'm going to be honest, that muscle memory is going to be hard for me to get rid of, but I'm going to be real glad to be rid of it, because as many, 8-10 hour streams as I do, that gets real old real fast. About 4 hours in, Pinky's feeling it. It's not having a good time. So that's just gonna be fantastic all the way around. Toggle sprint actually working is a thing that I very much appreciate, and just makes the game better at a base value of how the control of the game. Fantastic. Next up is the MR requirements on bounties. So this is not necessarily a super important change for a lot of the people that I think would probably be watching this video, because most of you guys, I would imagine, are probably in the MR 10 range, maybe more. So with that, not a big deal for you. However, for newer players, you are not going to be able to do the highest level bounties until you're MR 5, basically. The lower level bounties are locked very, very low. It's like 0... and then it's 0, 1, 2, and then I think it's 4 and 5. I think they skip 3 to unlock all of the bounties, which I think is very nice, because at MR5 that means you've done the War Within and stuff, and you're probably leveled for that more high level type deal, to be doing the 60 to 80 type content in the plains. So that stuff is all great. I think making it so that a new player can't show up and see this and be like, oh, I can totally handle that level 70 mission, is a good change to make it so people aren't like, oh, this game's impossibly difficult. So it helps kind of on another base level change. A thing that is not so good is the Intact Core Upgrade BP. And you see I have on my notes, do not do this. This is exorbitantly expensive, even with the improvements that they made to mining, which I did not jot down because I don't think they're particularly important. They don't change a ton. The Intact Core Upgrade, look at this. Look at this. Look at the costs on this shit. That is never worth it, under any fucking circumstances. Both of the rarest gem types, so you can make one, not even making a brilliant core. Whatever the fuck the top level is called. Brilliant shards is what I'm thinking of. You're not even making the top level core. It's just going up one level, which is nothing. And combine that with some other changes we're going to talk about in a second. It's the least worth it thing of all time. Please, God, do not actually use that BP unless you're just looking to get rid of resources that you could definitely use for other things. In fact, you could use those exact materials to make platinum. So please don't. Don't do such a thing. Besides that, the Ghoul lore fragments, which are the fragments that you would get from the Ghoul event that would happen on the plains, or just from ghouls in general, that is now actually a reasonable drop rate, because now ghouls can drop them, and the event, they are now common, apparently. So, as someone who spent 10 hours to get a fifth of the Ghoul lore fragments, pretty happy with this change, because that lore was basically completely inaccessible if you weren't looking at a wiki, which I think is hugely ridiculous and unacceptable, because for such a small, very insignificant amount of lore that those things provide, in actuality, having a 50-hour farm not a thing that people are really into, especially when that farm entails the exact same bounty that rewards basically nothing else for 50 fucking hours. So that's good. Glad that's changed. Definitely going to be getting those now that it is significantly simpler. Beyond that, we have some Terrorlist hunting improvements. So if you're hunting Terrorlists, especially if you're doing it in pug groups, things are going to be a lot clearer to read without you guys having to talk to each other. So you're going to have a shield waypoint on your lures now that is going to change colors whenever your lure is fully charged, which is going to make it very, very easy to know if you can DPS the boss and break one of his parts and all that business. Lures also will no longer get stuck, as if you get far enough away from them, they will just teleport to you to the nearest area where they can. That is both useful for speedrunning because it means that you're not going to have to wait for a lure that is very, very far away to catch up to you because they move pretty slow, as it will just teleport to you. And, like I said, they just won't get stuck. So those are fantastic changes. And then even beyond that, hunting Terrorlists is now significantly more lucrative in that all Vomvalists now have a 100% drop rate for their core. That means that the output towards your quill standing hunting one Terrorlist is now dramatically increased because there's a stage of the fight where it just pours Vomvalists on you. And if you appropriately destroy, like all of them, which is not very difficult, especially if you have the tier 2 amp, you are going to make a lot of standing hunting just one Terrorlist. And I would say in an efficient party, just hunting 2 Terrorlists in a night is probably going to be enough to cap you out at your quill standing cap for the day. So all that stuff, fantastic. And then for the people that can't hunt the Terrorlists yet, that want to do quills still, just taking out some Vomvalists at night, like every once in a while, like they're annoying you during fishing or whatever, those cores definitely add up over time. And maybe even before you've killed your first Terrorlist, you're going to be able to get something out of the quills system. All very, very good changes that are kind of like top level, just good things for the game. With the exception, of course, of that intact core upgrade blueprint, which is just absolutely ridiculously asinine. Then we had some augments released. I'm not going to be going over them super in depth, but I'm going to be just giving my kind of impressions on how these augments perform. So for Harrow, it is very solid, high DPS. It's an alternative to your normal 4, where you are using that invincibility mainly to survive burst damage, and are alternatively doing that once, and then basically infinitely keeping up a combo of you hitting headshots and just always red critting everything you see. This means that Harrow's potential DPS over time is dramatically higher than a lot of Warframes in terms of weapon usage, because especially building for this, like say using Primed Ravage on a Tigress Prime, which is an absolutely disgusting idea that I have tried out and is just gross. You can do that, and it is very, very effective for outputting DPS that is unfortunately not necessary. The thing about this augment is that it does provide a lot of damage to you and, of course, your party. Because it also ups the timer for anyone that's in your party that was affected initially by the buff, and you can extend it for them as well. But the amount of damage that Harrow can give with a full buff is significantly higher than I think we will ever need, because it's just such a massive increase to damage that I think the invulnerability period and being able to refresh that is just going to be significantly more useful over the life of the frame, basically, as one of the few things that Harrow is lacking is significant defenses. He is relatively tanky if played correctly and utilizing his 1 and other abilities appropriately, but removing your way to survive anything is a bit rough. With that, we're moving on to the Titania augment, which makes Titania very fast. She is a very, very speedy frame with this. I don't think it fixes Titania, because what this augment does is it makes it so that her 4 can do more DPS, which is good. Her 4 already had okay DPS. It's her only really ability worth using. So there's that. And it makes her 4 significantly faster. The problem with this augment is that it's not just doing that at a low cost. You have to cast multiple times, usually you're 1 on yourself, to get this buff up, and then you have to keep it up. which is a little energy intensive, and for a Warframe that doesn't have a particularly high energy cap, that can be kind of a rough proposition. And along with that, her 2 and her 3 and her 1 are by and large like basically completely useless in terms of what you're doing. So the requirement for this mod is a bit harder to meet. If Titania was the kind of frame who was flying around and her 2 was good enough to constantly use that on enemies, that would be one thing, as this would be trivial to keep up because it's just working off of a thing you're already doing, but her 2 is like basically completely useless, so it's a bit rough. If you want to fly around fast, I'll put a clip here of like me flying across the plains. You're very speedy. You're not going to beat Nova, but you're definitely up there in terms of going fast. And then finally, we have Nidus's Augment. So, Nidus's Augment is fine. It doesn't do enough damage to really be useful at like the mid-level, say like Swordy 1 or so, which is a bit unfortunate, except for maybe to Corpus enemies, but it's not like Nidus was having any problem with Corpus enemies anyway. It was changed from pre-release being viral to now being Toxin, which is significantly less useful. And the only real thing that this augment does is make it so that you can pop your 2 and utilize it again. And the main situation where that is useful is in farms that Nidus would be a part of, namely Vodunoi, as Nidus is meta for doing the Vodunoi farm. And while that farm is pretty important to the game, it is the #1 place to get endo in the entire game, in a group, of course. That is very, very niche. So it's a niche augment that is okay. Unfortunately, it can't build stacks or anything, or this might end up being fantastic. But yeah, it's like, it's there, it exists, it's an option for doing some farms. And then, in very unfortunate news, we have to talk about one nerf in particular that I think is very important, because I'm incredibly sad about this, and that is that the Plasmor can no longer headshot. So, that is bad. That's really bad for the weapon. The Plasmor already started to have trouble with enemies in the low hundreds, and this makes it so that it starts having trouble with enemies around level 90 or so. And I'm talking about regular enemies. So on Eximus, it means that the Plasmor is significantly less useful, which means that in sorties, especially 2 and 3, if you get like an Eximus stronghold, it is not going to be a fantastic thing for you to be using. Which, unfortunately, as you know, I rated it great in my review of all the primary weapons. I think that it will probably be bumped down to good in general, though I think time will kind of tell how it has to be reevaluated, because of course the damage changes will be coming by the time there is another full roster review of all the primary weapons. But it's really sad to see, because the Plasmor was just so fun, and it could headshot for so long, and its damage is really, even with the headshots, its damage is not like top in the charts here. It's still absolutely blown away by the Tiger's Prime, it's still absolutely blown away by the Corinth, it's still blown away by a ton of things, by like the Astala even. So it seems very, very strange that it was targeted for this nerf, unless someone at DE like saw the Hero augment and was like, well, it's really easy to get headshots with the Plasmor, nerf the Plasmor, which is just asinine, honestly. That's the only way I could see them possibly coming to this decision to nerf the Plasmor. It seems super silly to me. In better news, however, we are getting Zephyr and Atlas on the chopping block for reworks. Please God, I hope these reworks are good. For those that are interested, I do have an Atlas rework up on the channel. I think I'm going to try and work in and do a Zephyr rework as well for the channel, so you guys can see my ideas on that stuff. I am really proud of like the changes that I would make to Atlas, as I think they would make him incredible, and I hope you guys check that out. I'll throw a link in the description for you if you need to find it. I really, really want Atlas to be good, because I think he is probably like top 5 in terms of my favorite themes for a Warframe. So it'd be nice to see him be great. And in other news, Ash is getting into A rank. That might come as a huge surprise, but they're fixing his 4 to finally be not it won't include him unless you want to. So for those of you that like to be in your 4 and do the animations and be cutscene prime, you can do that. But now by default, you can just mark a bunch of enemies and then hit 4 again, and it just sends the clones out to go kill them. That is absolutely fantastic, and the effect that that will have on Ash's gameplay, I think, is a lot more dramatic than people might consider. So Ash does good damage with his 4. The problem that has always arisen with his 4, and the reason why his 4 was not so good, is because you have to spend the time marking all these enemies. And then, after you do that, you have to be in this very long cutscene where it's doing the damage. Removing the you being taken out of commission, you can do other Warframe things. So, for example, if you look down a hallway and you see a bunch of Grineer, you go, okay, marked. I've marked everyone in this hallway. Send the clones out. And now, since you are not a part of that, you can go do something else. And being the effect that being able to do something else has is dramatic. It is like a double or tripling of your efficiency as a Warframe. It's just, everything about it is so good. The entire thing. And as a bonus, the ability to, if you want to, engage with your 4 as a cutscene means that you don't lose the invincibility that you get if you are a part of your 4. So everything about this change is just absolutely perfect. It's wonderful. It's gonna be so good, and this will absolutely move Ash into the A rank as a Warframe super easily. I'm so excited for this because it will finally actually give me a reason to play as Ash that I have not had for a long time, because he's just always been like a discount of other Warframes, and this changes that significantly. So now we are going to move on to the last part of this, which is a cosmetics highlight. So there is some Tenogen stuff that I really like that I want to show off, and also the Mesa Deluxe came out, and I want to show that to you guys. So with that, let's move on over to actual gameplay, and we're going to show some of these skins. So first and foremost, we have this Mesa skin, which I have colored and such. By default, it looks like this. This is its default look, which is all right. I initially wasn't a huge fan of this skin, but it has grown on me significantly. And I think the number one thing that did that was for me to make this skin have purple energy. I don't know why that changed my opinion on it so drastically, but for some reason, like the 2 tints of blue and the white and the purple just really works for me, and I ended up even enjoying the helmet, which I was absolutely not initially. So downsides to this skin, like right off the bat, other helmets do not like go great with this because it has the initial problem, which is like the long neck syndrome, because Mesa's regular body usually has the collar on it that usually hides like the bottom, like underneath the helmet, there's always been that collar, so most of her helmets are focused around, oh, she's always going to have that, and the Deluxe doesn't. So some helmets can look a little weird, and also because this skin is somewhat metallic in its majority, helmets like Falcon, unless you go with a very dark color like black, which I will just show real quick. If you were to change your main color to black, you can see that the difference is like not so noticeable in terms of material type, so you can make this work. But if you want to use brighter colors, it is going to be very obvious that the materials do not match, which I know is important to quite a few people. And also, just to quickly show where all these colors are coming from, this is coming from Dojo. This one is, this is an unavailable color. Use some variant of white. And this one is right here in the Dojo palette as well. And this one I ended up going with my regular gold that I use, which is in the fire palette, and I think this one also came from Dojo. Got a lot of use out of palettes I don't normally use. So that is what I went with for the Mesa skin, and the next skin we're going to talk about is the Octavia skin, which is very nice. I like this quite a bit. The main thing that I think this skin does is fix the color channels on Octavia and make her a lot less like weirdly plasticky. Octavia was always one of those frames that I thought looked kind of weird, and I think this goes a long way to make her look a lot better. With that, this skin doesn't really have any problems with switching helmets, so if you're not a fan of like the Twin Tails look, I don't think that it is particularly negatively affected, except for maybe this. Yeah, this one's color channels are maybe not great for it, although I'm sure you could make it work with some slight adjustments. But in majority, I think that this just generally works. And I know a lot of people were complaining about the like kind of the Twin Tail like hair look downgrade, which I do agree with. I don't think it should have been downgraded because that seems kind of silly to me. But they do still retain their like look whenever you're actually walking around and stuff. I think it actually ends up looking very good. From the shots that DE themselves put out pre-release, I thought this was going to look terrible energy-wise. But it looks significantly better than I expected. Ended up really liking it a lot. And then for colors on this, if anybody would like to copycat it, this is that white. And then this is from, what palette is this? Is Corpus? That one. And then Xmas. And this is the gold that I always use. And then I went with another Xmas color instead of my regular blue, because I think it makes the hair look just slightly better to use this color instead. And then in terms of attachments, for anyone wondering what the armor set I've been using is, it's the Atavist armor, which is one of the recent Prime armor sets from Prime Access. I think it works really, really well on a lot of Warframes. And you're about to see it again, because we are going to check out the Hero skin. So, initially, with the Hero skin, I do not play Hero a ton, because usually I am not the Hero in the terror list hunting excursions. But, I'll just be honest, I saw this skin and I had to have it, basically. Like, it is of such quality that I just simply needed it, because it is just so nice. I really, really love how this skin looks. And I think I was able to make it work really well with some colors I might not otherwise use in main part. Like a lot of dark colors, like this like lighter brownish and stuff that I would not normally use as like a main palette, I think go really, really well on this skin just because of the materials that were used. And this is, of course, one of the Grack series skins, which have in general been very, very good. So with that, I'm using this color from Grenier and... Ooh, whoa, weird load. That is just the Smoke Black. This is the slightly lighter Smoke Black, which I think blends a little better with some of the materials I'm using it on. And this is my standard gold, as we saw before. And then my energy is my standard energy color that I'm kind of using in most places on my Warframes. So yeah, that is what's up. And also for anyone that's wondering what this regalia is, it is the Accord Sigil. For those that are looking for that, and the Katir side pieces, and then the Master emblem on the back, for those that were wondering. Anyway, that is going to do it for this roundup. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know this is kind of a weird thing I don't do a lot, but yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow.